So let us start with the yoga. We'll do yoga. Today we'll do it accent. Accent yoga. You've heard of it? It's taught by Indians. That is how you know that yoga is real, that is being taught. It is done with the accent. You understand? Get it? Okay. So today we will start with Surya Namaskar. It's too low. There we go. Not too high. Let's do it. You guys see me? All right. So we're going to be back at the old setup yesterday, which is going to have faster internet and more space. So the cameras and stuff will be a little bit better. So let's start with Surya Namaskar. So take a moment. So stand up straight. No, we're doing in the accent. Okay. 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 We'll start with the head bobble. The head bobble can be used to say yes or no. Feel yourself wobble, 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 wobble. Very good. Very good. Very good. Both sides. Okay, so start by standing feet shoulder length apart. Let your arms hang down. And now put your arms together, feet together. Start by entering your Namaste position. So this is our anchoring. And if you guys feel comfortable, we're going to start all together. If you're new to the practice and don't feel comfortable, you can observe one round. We're going to do 3 rounds of Surya Namaskar, okay? So begin. Arms up. Biceps to your ears. And then lean down. Touch your toes. Keep your legs straight. Don't bend your knees. It's okay to not bend very much. Let gravity do the work for you. You don't strain. Go down as far as you can naturally go. And let your head hang. And now right leg forward. Palms face down by your side. Good. And then look up. 1 foot back. Knee into your shoulder. Just look up a little bit. Notice that when you look down, you can relax. When you look up, the strain increases, which is perfectly fine. Right leg back. Push-up position. And then toes touching the ground, knees touching the ground, chest and forehead, with butt and chin off the ground. Relax for a moment. And then feet flattened. The tops of your feet should be touching the ground. Push up, hips into the ground, shoulders out, elbows bent, and look up. And now toes back down, touching the ground, and then push up. Butt in the air, heels into the ground, ears by your biceps again. Let your head hang a little bit and relax into the posture. And now left leg forward. And look up. Feel that stretch in your hips, in your calves. Feel it kind of through here on this side. And then feet touching the ground, head hanging, tip your toes. And notice already, but between earlier and now, how much you can bend. As your body wakes up. And now, palms together. Pull up. Stretching so high. Feel that expansion in your back. Feel how open your chest feels, your back feels, and then come back. Okay, we're going to go again. We're going to go a little bit faster this time. Okay. So arms up. Arms down. Touch your toes. Left leg forward. Palms by your feet or your foot. Other leg back. Look up. And then left leg back. Push-up position. And knees to the ground. Chest to the ground, forehead to the ground. Butt in the air. Flatten your feet. Hips into the ground and push up. Keep your shoulders out. Look up. Feel that beautiful stretch. Good job. And toes into the ground and then push up again. Butt into the air. Heels down. Now right leg forward. Look up. Excellent. You're doing great. Other leg forward. Arms up. And back to center. Okay. Good. Take a moment to just relax a little bit. So notice what your body's telling you. Well, it's like, hey man, we're here. So notice that you're starting to feel loose. You can still feel some stiffness. Maybe you feel a little bit energized, hopefully. For the EU gang, maybe this is a little mid-afternoon pick-me-up. Let's do our last round. So before we do our last round, I'm going to tell you guys now why we do yoga, okay? The purpose of yoga is to bring your attention to the present so that you can't think about anything else. It is the preparatory step for meditation, right? So what we do is we use our body as an anchor to keep us from thinking distracting thoughts. And our body is a really powerful anchor, especially when you do all these poses. And so now for this next round, what I really want you guys to focus on is adopt as much or as little of the posture as you can, with the goal not being how far you stretch or how far you reach or how straight your back is. The goal shouldn't be to adopt a particular physical posture. Your judge of whether you're doing yoga correctly should not come from anything that anyone can see. Whether you're doing yoga correctly comes entirely from here. What is your mind doing? Can you keep the posture stably, but with attention in the present, or not? So you want it to be stable, but you want it to be demanding enough to where your mind is focusing on keeping that posture how it is. If you become too comfortable, then the mind begins to wander. If it becomes too difficult, then you cannot maintain it for a long time. And you guys see that the goal is to maintain your mind in the present for as long as possible. That's why we do yoga. Okay? So now put your feet together and we're going to begin again. So, eyes closed or open if you need stability. And just feel your body. Feel it in this present moment. Feel your palms. Feel your elbows. Feel your chest, your shoulders, your knees. You can anchor in on the instability if you want to. And now arms up. Now feel how your back is different in this position. Feel the stretch and the pull kind of beneath your shoulder blades, in between your shoulder blades and your spine. And reach up even further. See what it does to your body as you become ramrod straight. See how your breath is constricted. And now down. Now once again, feel what your body tells you. Tightness in the neck, tightness in the back. And with each breath, sink deeper. Now we're going to go forward. Right leg forward, left leg back, arms by your sides. Look up and feel. Feel your hips. Feel the relaxation in your back as you slightly curve. Feel the difference between your right palm and your left palm, your right arm and your left arm. Is one of them is being pushed up a little bit. Feel the stretch in your right palm as you strain to put it into the ground. And now right leg back. Push-up position. Feel the instability begin to come on. Try to keep your back, butt, and feet straight. No butts in the air. You want to be straight. And then relax. Come down. And notice that even though we're relaxed now, there may not be a whole lot of physical strain. Your body is still sending you signals in the present. Relaxation can be a signal as well. And now feet flat on the ground, toes pointed behind you. Push up. Hips on the ground, shoulders rolled out. Look up. Feel that stretch in your back. Feel the tightness. As we hold the position, notice the burning as it begins in your arms. See, your body is sending you signals now. And then downward facing dog, Parvatasana. Feet flat on the ground. Now let your head hang and see how that feels. And now left leg forward. Look up. Now, other way up. So I'm going to scoot back a little bit just so you can see, and then heading down. Good. Then up, palms together, hands all the way up. And now relax in this position too. And then come back. Now we're going to go into Shavasana. So go ahead and lay down on your back. Palms by your sides, feet out to each side. Notice your breathing. Slow and deep of its own accord. And now let yourself come back. With your eyes closed, go ahead and sit up. Okay. Just take a moment. See the black space in front of your eyes as your eyes are closed. We're going to go ahead and just roll straight into meditation. So today we'll be doing a third eye meditation. If you want to, you can grab a cushion or two. Try to sit in a way that's comfortable. Remember that if you elevate your butt, that it'll be easier to sit up straight. So keep your back straight. We're going to do charging the laser beam. So take your middle finger and place it about maybe about a half an inch or a quarter inch away from the center of your forehead, between your eyebrows. Don't touch. Keep your eyes closed. Move it as close as you can without touching. Even though you aren't touching, you should be able to feel the finger. Just concentrate on the sensation that's created in your forehead, or possibly between your forehead and your finger. Go ahead and relax and continue to focus on that point of your forehead. Now begin again. Put the finger back. Now relax. Focus on that point in your forehead. Put all of your energy, all of your intention, and all of your attention into that point and push into it with your concentration. Now a third time. Bring your middle finger back. The point between your eyebrows. Don't touch. Bring your arm down. So concentrate. Now relax. You're going to take a deep breath in and out. In and out. Now last one, very slow. In and out. So put your palms together in front of you and express gratitude towards yourself, towards the universe, that you are alive, you are here. You may be facing struggles. The world may be falling apart, but that you exist. You are capable. You can't move mountains. You can't even move yourself. That's perfectly fine. You can be this person, that you will do what needs to be done. Rub your palms together in front of you. Feel the heat and the friction. Cup them over your eyes. With one last inhalation and exhalation, open your eyes and let your palms come down. All right. Okay. All right, what do you guys... Okay, let's take a quick poll. Just want to take a 3-minute break. What do y'all think? Okay, looks like most people don't want to take a break, but there are enough people that do. So why don't we take a 3-minute break, because there are enough people, like people may need to use the bathroom. I think it's perfectly fine, guys. So let's not be impatient. Let's take a quick break. I'm going to need a minute to set up Reflector and get some water and stuff like that anyway. So why don't we take a break? Let's be patient. Let's take a moment for our mind to go ahead and recalibrate. We'll start in about 3 minutes, okay? And then we'll be prepared. Notice how you feel now, and you'll be properly prepared to learn when we get back, okay? Actually do this while we're waiting. You gotta be kidding me. There we go. Saved. What the fuck? Is this black? You gotta be kidding me. What is wrong with this thing? So this is what I get for trying to, make sure everything works ahead of time. Okay. Okay, saved. Okay, I swear, guys, it's like, look, I do the same damn thing every single time. And it's finicky. I'm telling you guys, it's not my fault. Okay. Let's see if we can, so let's get started. Okay. So today, hopefully everyone's back, we're going to talk about meditation, okay? So let's start by talking about meditation. Okay. It's working, Bob. Okay. So this is going to be a little bit of a slightly more academic lecture, okay? So a lot of people wonder, like, what kind of meditation? Actually, let me go shut the door. Okay, I'm pretty sure that there are pancakes being made downstairs, and they smell delicious. Okay. So a lot of people are wondering, what kind of meditation should they do? And, like, even what is meditation? Because people don't really know. So we're going to start with a little bit of history of meditation. So the first kind of meditation was actually developed by tantrics. Okay, so tantra is a discipline that's probably 5,000 years old. Tantra is a form of mysticism. and tends to have three parts. Yagna, mantra, and yantra. Oh. Okay. And so yagna is like a ritual. So this is like casting a... Oh. Ritual. Mantra is like a phrase that accumulates energy. And this is like a geometric energy accumulator. So the first thing to understand about Tantra is that Tantra is about the accumulation of energy. So in a sense, the focus is on sort of the interaction between self and the outside. So it's like self, outside. And Tantrics believe that basically you can do these three things to accumulate particular kinds of energy to exert an influence on the outside world. So the goal of these is to influence the outside world. Actually, not necessarily the outside world, but to get sort of a tangible benefit. So there are mantras, for example, that, you know, like there are certain kinds of like mantras and fasts that Hindus do to like get good husbands, for example, or there are mantras to gain health or mantras for prosperity or things like that. So like Tantra is like basically it's almost like a system of magic, okay? And there are tantric meditations. And the tantric meditations are sort of geared towards they're geared towards sort of accumulating particular energies to get particular ends. And so over here, we're going to have Kundalini Yoga. So we'll talk about Kundalini in a second. And so over time, the Tantrics actually developed yoga. And yoga is sort of a system to reach enlightenment. Okay? And so let's just think about this for a second. So yoga, the root word of yoga is yuj. And yuj means union or yoke. And what that means is that like yoga is essentially like there's this concept in Eastern religions that our consciousness is part of a bigger consciousness called Brahman. And so that basically the unit of existence is consciousness. And there's this whole sea of consciousness, and we become a drop out of that, like we take a drop out of that ocean and we embody it within a physical form, and that's you. So there's a part of you that's the physical form, but your true essence is this like tiny bit of consciousness. So this is the idea that, you know, enlightenment, people call it realization or enlightenment. It's not learning. It's not discovering something new. It's actually remembering something old, right? Realization is a new perspective on something that you already know. It's not gaining new knowledge. So the process of enlightenment is this stepwise process to become aware that you are actually divine and eternal and all this other like wonderful, beautiful stuff, okay? But the main thing here is that what yoga is really for is to help us become one with this thing called the infinite or Brahman. It's kind of hard to describe because you have to experience Brahman to really understand what it is. It's kind of like, I want you guys to imagine this for a second. So imagine that you've never been in a body of water. So you've seen water, you've drank water, but you've never like been underwater. It's very, very difficult to describe to someone what the experience of moving in water or being underwater is like. It's like, you can say like, yeah, you're moving, but it's like you're moving slowly, right? Like how would someone who has never been underwater like know what slow movement feels like? You know, you could use a word sluggish, but like sluggish is not, you know, doesn't accurately describe it. So to understand Brahman and what that means, you really have to experience it. So yoga is the process. So the tantrics basically were like, okay, like there's this they developed this process of yoga, and yoga is the process of becoming one with the divine or whatever, realization, enlightenment, all the same thing. The other interesting thing about yoga is that it involves the word yoke. So that's kind of like Sanskrit has these dual meanings. So the other thing about yoga is that yoga also means freedom. So yoga is that which frees you from the thing that binds you to life, and also that which joins you to the infinite. Okay? So it's kind of weird. So it's like sort of freedom and liberation and like that which is bound, or the process of becoming unbound. And then in yoga, there are, we'll get to Kundalini in a second. So in yoga, there are 4 kinds of yoga. So there's Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Raja Yoga. Okay? And these are paths to enlightenment. So what does this mean? This means that this process of liberation can be attained through basically four ways. So this is the path of action. So this is the idea that if you want to like get to God or become enlightened, you can just do it through actions. You can just you can just be a good person and do good things. You don't have to do yoga. You don't have to meditate. You don't have to worship someone. You can just basically be like a secular, atheistic, good person. And if you devote yourself to actions and kind of like doing a good job, you can become enlightened. Okay. So karma yogis tend to be like activists. Like a lot of them are sort of karma yogis. So like MLK or Mahatma Gandhi are like good examples of karma yogis. Bhakti yoga is the path of devotion. So the best way to understand this is essentially like religion, but not necessarily, okay? It includes religion, but isn't necessarily exclusive religion. So any religion that we think of, where we sort of, a religion is a set of beliefs that if you follow it, you'll kind of be, you know, you'll go to heaven or whatever. Like that stuff is essentially devotion, right? So if you look at the Judeo-Christian religion, like you devote yourself to the ideals and teachings of a particular God. So it can be like Jesus or the Father or Yahweh or Allah. Like it can, in the Eastern religions, it's like Krishna or Ram or whoever, or Shiva or whatever. That essentially like devoting yourself to a particular God or ideal is like a way to become divine. The other interesting thing that the yogis actually say is that it is not the object of devotion that matters, right? So like they actually say, so there's like person, there's devotion, and then there's object. So a lot of times like religious conflict is kind of centered on the idea that like my God is better than your God, right? They say that like, okay, so like when Hindus and Muslims fight, like a lot of it has to do with like there's like religious conflict, or when Jews and Muslims fight, there's like religious conflict. There's this idea of conversion, or like my God is better than your God. But like what the yogis actually noticed is that like gods change over time. They're like all these tons of gods, tons of religions. It actually doesn't make sense that any particular God is like better than any other God. So there's like Zeus, and then there's also like Hades, and then there's Jesus, and there's, I'm sure a lot of people will find this offensive. I'm just making statements. And there's Krishna. There are all kinds of gods that have existed in the history of humanity. And what the yogis observed, and you guys are completely inclined to agree or disagree, right? So remember that the purpose of me teaching is to give you guys testable hypotheses, not knowledge. What the yogis observed is that it's the act of devotion to your particular God that is the important thing. And what I mean by that is that like they basically looked at religious people, or they looked at religions, and they said, some people who practice religion are assholes, and some people who practice religion are good. Therefore, it is not the religion itself that makes someone good or bad. It is like the degree to which you devote yourself to the ideal, right? So they kind of said, like, it doesn't matter whether you worship Zeus or Kali or Jesus or whatever. The act of devotion is the important thing. The other interesting thing about Bhakti Yoga is it doesn't necessarily include religion. It doesn't include only religion. So you can devote yourself to a particular ideal like climate change, right? So you can say that I'm going to like, if you put your heart and soul and effort and mind behind like a particular ideal and you devote yourself to that, you will become spiritually purified in that process. So that's where like karma yoga and bhakti yoga kind of overlap some. But ultimately, it's the idea that you kind of set a target that you say, this thing is more important than I am. And that I'm going to become an instrument of like achieving this thing. And that instrument can be God if you're like, let's say you're a priest, right? So you're like, okay, I'm going to become like an instrument to be like God's will. Or you can be an instrument of climate change. Or you can be an instrument of like whatever. It doesn't matter. The main idea is that you devote yourself to something. And in that process, so then people may ask like, okay, can you devote yourself to killing other people or things like that? The interesting thing is that, you know, are there good things that you can devote yourself to or bad things that you can devote yourself to? In a sense, yes. Like you can, the object of your devotion doesn't matter. The manner of your devotion matters. So how you become devoted is very important. So I know that there are a lot of people out there who seem to be for a cause, but they're like spiritually bereft, right? They're like, they don't actually, whatever they devote themselves to does not result in them becoming like humble or knowledgeable or like spiritually like grown, like less ego. Like those kinds of things don't work. So I don't think that that's appropriate devotion. It is the way in which you devote yourself that's actually important, not what you devote yourself to. Okay, so that's devotion. Okay, Jnana Yoga is the path of knowledge or contemplation. And I used to think that I was a Jnana Yogi, but it turns out that I'm not, or I'm on the path of Jnana Yoga. So the path of knowledge apparently is very, very hard and very few people do it and it's hard to learn. It's essentially contemplation. So it's like kind of like thinking your way to enlightenment. So it's not quite not logic, but it's really contemplation. And like logic can come out of contemplation, but like logic cannot make you reflective, right? So you can like, just because you learn something logically doesn't mean that you change, but there's a different process between reflecting and logic. The two may seem related, but this doesn't lead to change. This does lead to change. So all I mean by this is that if you look at your thought process, you'll notice that thinking about something, there are like different ways in which you can think about something. And some of the ways in which you think about stuff will like cause you to change and learn something. And other ways like don't cause you to learn and change something. And so Jnana Yoga is sort of the process of like teasing that apart and essentially doing a lot of reflection about the nature of the universe, the nature of yourself, the nature of God, and then you can kind of become enlightened. So the path that I follow is Raja Yoga, okay? And Raja Yoga has 8 steps. Okay, so step number 1 is Yama. Step number 2 is Niyama. Okay, so these are observances. Personal, societal. So Yama and Niyama are like codes of conduct. So this is like the closest thing to like the 10 commandments, although you don't have to follow them because you're going to go to hell. It's just, these are processes of spiritual growth. And as you move along this axis, this is just a cause. This a little bit because I can't. Part of the reason my handwriting is bad is because half the iPad is sitting off of the desk. Let's shift this out. It's going to be a lot better when I'm back at my other setup. Okay. So you spiritually grow like through these processes. So yamas and niyamas are things like ahimsa or brahmacharya. So ahimsa means nonviolence. Satya is truth. So examples are satya, truthfulness, ahimsa, nonviolence, Like other things include cleanliness. So these are observances that you do for yourself and observances that you do towards other people. And as you start to become a truthful person, so if you stop lying, the Raja yogis or the yogis claim or believe or tell you that they give you a hypothesis that as you lie less, as you become less violent, you become more of a spiritual person. And what does spiritual mean? It means moving a step closer to enlightenment. We'll talk about that in a second, okay? You guys are probably like, what does this have to do with meditation? We'll get there. So next thing is asana. These are yoga postures. Okay? So why do we do this? Because so remember that the goal here, so we're going to end up down here with samadhi, which is temporary enlightenment. So the goal of Raja Yoga is to level up slowly to where you get to your last stage, which is samadhi, which is to enter into a state of temporary enlightenment. And in the process of that leveling up, it's hard. You can't just go, straight to end game content. Samadhi is like end game content. And so in order to get to samadhi, you have to level up with yama and niyama. And the first real meditative practice that you do, you can't read that. Yeah, sorry. The first meditative practice that you do is actually asana, which is physical posture. So today when we were doing yoga, I was encouraging you guys to notice that your mind is in the present. So your mind literally becomes trained to understand what being in the present is like. And the more time that you spend being in the present and focused in asana, the easier it is to meditate afterward because your mind is already knows how to adopt that stance of focus and meditation. So after that is pranayama. So these are breathing techniques. So a lot of the techniques that I teach on stream or to you guys are not actually meditation techniques. They're pranayama. So pranayama is a set of breathing techniques that's aimed to stabilize your life force or chi to make your body and mind conducive to meditation. So they're used to kind of calm the mind, but they're not actually true meditation. So next is pratyahara. So these techniques are sensory withdrawal techniques. Okay? And so what this means is these are techniques that are designed to essentially bring your senses into yourself. So if we think about, so we're going to talk about pratyahara, okay? So I think this is an important thing to understand. Sensory. Withdrawal. Okay. I'll work on my handwriting, guys, I promise. So let's think about this for a second. Normally, our attention goes, how does our attention, where is our attention? So we have sight, sound, smell, touch, taste, kinesthetics. So if you think about it, our attention normally goes into these things, right? So I'm walking down the street and I smell something cooking, and then my attention follows that scent, and then my mind starts to think about food. Or I see something I'm oh, look, there's an advertisement for a video. Let's say I'm on my computer and then I'm scrolling through Reddit, and then I see oh, on our gaming, there's a game that's coming out today. Mountain Blade 2 is coming out today. Oh, interesting. It's early access. So my sight then triggers my mind, and my attention kind of leaves my body, leaves my mind and goes into whatever I'm looking at. So my mind is occupied externally. So now my question, pancakes, exactly, right? So now my question is, what happens when you're what happens to your capacity to listen to music when you close your eyes? What do you guys think? Right? So now my question, okay, so let's assume this for a second. So let's say that I knock out sight, and then sound gets enhanced, smell gets enhanced. Or let's do this. Touch gets enhanced, taste gets enhanced, and your kinesthetic sense gets enhanced. Okay? So now my question is like, what happens? So if when we're doing yoga and our eyes are closed, it's easier to feel our body, right? Like it's easier to feel the vibrations. So let's say that we knock this out. What happens to the other senses? What do you guys think? Plus, plus. Very good. Right? So I want you guys to think about this for a second. So first of all, we're going to notice what this means. So when I'm doing yoga and I close my eyes and I focus on my body, do you guys understand that that doesn't mean thoughts happen, right? So mind is not anywhere in here. Mind is separate from all of this because mind is thoughts. And I would argue that when you get lost in your mind, all of these actually decrease. Does that make sense? Like when I'm daydreaming or I'm occupied in my thoughts, my attention is actually in the mind. It's not in any of my senses. And if we think about a lot of meditation techniques, they involve using the senses to pull you out of mind. Right? So like, I almost want you guys to envision it this way, that it's mind versus senses. You guys see that? So like this has an antagonistic relationship to the senses. So let's just think about this for a second. So if I, when I'm doing yoga and I close my eyes and my kinesthetic sense increases, I'm focused in the present, I can feel my body in a new way. If I close my eyes and really smell food and taste food and am not distracted by like watching TV, then the experience of food enhances. So there's an antagonistic relationship between thoughts and senses, or thoughts and attention. So the attention can either go here towards the mind, or it can go to the others. And in a sense, that's true of all of the other senses as well. Like if I'm, because we kind of said that if I close my eyes, my sound enhances. So you could argue that if I'm seeing and hearing at the same time, that each of those is reduced. So there are antagonistic relationships between all of these. So now my question to you guys is if my mind is empty, so through yoga, I manage to empty my mind because I'm not thinking about anything, and then I cut out each sense, where does my attention go? What does it focus on? Where does it go? What's here? Nope. Incorrect. Not thoughts. What does that mean? To yourself? What is yourself? What is that? To the body? No, the kinesthetic sense is the body. This is the body. Enlightenment in the present, Big Bang, mind, reflection, self. What is self? You say self, what is that? Freedom, nothing, present. What does that mean? Empty? Just being? What? Present moment? What? Where is time in all of this? What does time have to do? When I am sensing my body, and when my eyes close with full attention, am I not in the present moment? So this is meditation. Now you guys understand what meditation is. This is true meditation. So you guys are using all these words and you're describing to me what it's like to swim to someone who's never been in water. So this is meditation. This is the goal of meditation. It's not to be in any of these things. It's the systematic process of, let me put it this way. This is actually a better answer. this is where your mind goes. This is what it is, okay? So, what are the words that yogis use to describe this? Advait, Nirgun. Advait means non-dual. What does that mean? We tend to think about things that are good or bad, light or dark, positive or negative, hot or cold. And this state is neither. It is non-dual. It is just one thing. It is what it is. In my first description, I still have this description. So I wrote like a journal entry about my first real experience of meditation. And the title of the journal entry was Isness. And I was really, really excited because I felt like I had discovered something. And I sent it to like half a dozen people who I knew. And I was like, read this and like, tell me if you get it. And everyone was like, I don't understand what the fuck you're talking about. They didn't understand like what I was saying. And I was just talking about like isness. Isness is what this state is. So in Sanskrit, they call it non-dual or without quality. So objects or things in the world have qualities, right? This shirt is blue. This microphone is up. The microphone is on my head. We can describe qualities to all kinds of things. Their location in space, their color, their taste, their weight. There are all kinds of qualities that we give to all kinds of stuff in the world. We can say things are good, things are bad, things are pleasurable, things are painful, things are present, things are past, things are future. There are all kinds of qualities that we can ascribe, but that this state is actually without any quality. It is that which is with no quality, and that is what meditation is. Okay? Now, let's go back. So now you guys see how, like, if you want to get to this state, so these last two are going to be about this state. But if you guys want to get there, do you guys see how, like, you have to train yourself to do this process? Like Xing this out and then Xing this out and then Xing this out. Like this is something that you can train yourself to do. So this is what pratyahara is. Okay? Next is dharana, which is focus. So this is actually taking the mind and putting it on one thing. So one pointedness of the mind. Okay? So now let's talk about dharana. One pointed mind. So let me ask you guys something. What happens when how can I say this? When something becomes constant for me, what happens to my awareness of it? Do you guys know? It's actually an AR, so sorry. I'll fix it. D-H-A-R-A-N-A. It goes away. Perfect. Right? So if I put this shirt on first thing in the morning, I notice the shirt. Like when I put my deodorant on this morning, I noticed the smell. And as the smell becomes constant, I lose it, right? If there's a background hum of like construction, after a while you like get acclimatized to it and it falls away. So the goal of dharana is to use one object to push all others away. So you can't turn off your mind. It's very hard to push something out of your mind. Like if you have anxiety and I tell you to stop thinking about anxiety, that does not work, right? You cannot stop the mind. All you can do is direct the mind. So when someone is having a panic attack, we don't tell you, hey, stop thinking about the panic. Just stop thinking those thoughts. It doesn't work. What we do is we direct your mind to a different place. So we say, okay, focus on your breath and take slow breaths. So you can redirect the mind, but you can't stop it. Can't stop it. Okay? So then the question becomes, like, once you redirect the mind, and then your mind is focused on one thing, what happens when your mind acclimatizes to that thing? We'll get to step 6 and 7. Dharana is step 6. Hold on a second. So moves on. Does it move on? So actually, when you do dharana properly, this is how our mind works, okay? Object 1, object 2, object 3, object 4. So these are thoughts. Okay? So what we're going to do with dharana is whenever we have a thought, we're going to actually direct it back. So let's say object 5 is the breath. And then we have another thought, and then with dharana, we're going to be like, come back to the breath. And then we think about pancakes, so we're going to come back to the breath. And then we think about handwriting, so we're going to come back to the breath. And then over time, all we're going to have is thought 5. And then eventually, thought 5 gets smaller, smaller, smaller. And then we're left with this. Right? So what is this? This is this. This is the question mark. So all we have is raw attention without any focus. And then you're left with emptiness. And this is step 7. Dhyana. This is really meditative state. Okay? Sort of like mindfulness. We'll talk about mindfulness in a second. Okay? So this is where a lot of confusion around meditation comes. People say, I'm not good at meditating. I can't meditate. Other people are good at meditating, and I can't do it. And when I ask them, what do you mean by that? And they say, like, I can't, people say empty their thoughts. I can't empty my thoughts. So the first thing to understand is that dharana is a verb and and dhyan is a state. So dharana is something that you can do, and this is something that happens to you. Right? So when people say, I had a very productive meditation session, what they're talking about is that they entered the state of meditation and they hung out there for a while. They spent time over here. Okay? Other times people say, I didn't have a productive meditation session and I tried and tried and tried and it didn't work for me. And essentially they spent time here. You guys see the difference? And so when people say like meditate, you guys have to understand that meditation is like going to bed and falling asleep. Right? And what do I mean by that? Like, so when I say I went to sleep at 10 o'clock last night, that is impossible. You cannot go to sleep. It is impossible to go to sleep. Sleep is not a verb that you do. Sleep is a state of mind that if you're lucky, you achieve or happens to you. You can go to bed. I can lay down, close my eyes, and pull the covers over my head or under my head. But that's not sleep. That's going to bed. One is something you can do. One is something that happens to you. And that's what dharana and dhyana is. And one of the biggest problems in English is that, like, when we teach meditation, we don't draw the distinction between verb and state. Like, we don't teach that as part of the basics, which I think is criminal because, like, no wonder, like, people just misunderstand meditation so hard. And that's because what happens is you have people who really understand meditation, who then train people who become certified in meditation, and then they go and teach other people because you're a certified meditation teacher. But a certified meditation teacher does not make you a good meditation teacher. Because in the West, we have like qualifications that you meet, but good teachers are gurus, right? And like a good teacher can teach and when people don't understand. The reason that so many people misunderstand meditation is because you have a lot of certified and bad teachers out there. Doesn't mean that they're not like good people. It just means that they're not qualified to teach, but they teach because they're certified. Fine. So in the old system, there was no certification for meditation teaching. Your teacher basically said, okay, now you are capable of teaching. Like they just assign you like that certification. Whereas now, like we essentially have a protocol for certification. If you go through 8 weeks of training, you're a certified teacher. It's not an individual assessment of like the teacher's capability to teach. And that's why I think we have a lot of misunderstandings. Okay. So let's kind of go back to this. So dharana, dhyan, and samadhi. Okay, so dhyan is the meditative state of mind where it's a no mind state and you're kind of like in this place. Okay, you're over here. Actually, there's two phases actually. So this is dhyan and this is samadhi. Okay, so they're actually like sub-levels. So even in samadhi, there are like further levels of this. And so that's kind of beyond our scope because you really have to experience samadhi to even understand. It's kind of like me saying, you know, it's like trying to explain like color to a blind person, let alone the blind person doesn't even understand sight, but like trying to explain color to them is even like a completely different thing. So the first thing is like, you know, you have to start by like looking at the world in black and white. And that we can kind of do. Like I can explain the idea that like you can visually perceive objects to a blind person. And then once you're able to visually perceive things, then like you take the next step of explaining color to a colorblind person. So we're kind of 2 steps away. So we're not going to go into further states of samadhi. Okay. So let's actually stick here. So now, so this is meditation, okay? This is like understanding meditation. So let's kind of try to recap a little bit. So when we think about meditative techniques, there are a couple of different techniques that we can use. Or actually, let's just talk about mindfulness for a second. So what is mindfulness? So mindfulness is actually in Sanskrit, it's called Sakshi Bhav, or witnessing attitude. And Sakshi Bhav is the first step of dharana. So it's like the first achievement, first step of dhyan. So there are actually like a lot of states of mind. So Sakshi Bhav is kind of like the most basic state of dhyan. And there are further levels of dhyan and even further levels of samadhi. So mindfulness is not even, it's not really even a meditative state. It's just a witnessing attitude. It's the capacity to separate. So it's the capacity to separate self from mind and observe this difference. Okay, so that like these are separate things. There's actually what I should do is this. So most of the time, we don't really think about ourselves as different from our mind. We don't really think about the fact that there's like a gap between self and mind. Like we think that who we are is what we think. So mindfulness is like increasing the gap between self and mind. And just observing this difference. This difference is mindfulness. It's not even really meditation. And so mindfulness is like a great preparatory exercise, but the goal, like you'll cultivate mindfulness if you do this practice, but it's not the goal. It's just, it's like the first realization that self and mind are different. Okay. And then as you get deeper, you'll do different kinds of, you'll get a deeper understanding. So what does this mean practically? Okay. So now I'm going to run through a couple of things. So if you want to meditate, what kind of meditation should you do? So Kundalini Yoga, I'm going to talk about Kundalini Yoga for a second, posits that there are 7 chakras, and each chakra has certain attributes. And that working on these chakras will give you certain, how can I say this, certain achievements or abilities. So for example, when I'm teaching meditation personally, one-on-one to someone who wants okay, so then what we have to think about, let's just pause for a second. So let me say this. So what I want you guys to understand is that Tantra is about sort of the outside world, and yoga is really about the self. So nothing in yoga has anything to do with like money or power or fame or wealth or any kind of stuff. Yoga is just about the systematic process of like being able to do things like this. This is what yoga is about. This is what yoga is about. Nothing here has anything to do with like magic or accumulating wealth or power or anything like that. Tantra is about that stuff. Tantra is about accumulating a particular kind of Shakti or energy and then directing that energy towards a particular goal. Now, directing that energy, you could direct it towards your personal spiritual practice. So the mantra that I started using myself, that my teacher gave me, so he asked me, like, are you interested in being like materialistically successful or spiritually successful? And I said, I want both. And he said, okay, that's fine. So he gave me a mantra that helped me grow spiritually and also helped me become materialistically successful. So I really do. I mean, it's kind of weird, but like when I think about moving from, a 2.5 GPA to like being a Harvard trained physician and faculty at Harvard Medical School, I really wonder about statistically how often that happens. And if the statistical probability is quite low, it makes me wonder if there was something specific that I did to increase my odds. And I really do. I know this sounds crazy. I don't understand it myself. But if you just look at it, if there's a statistical phenomenon that's quite rare, either I am 1 out of a million, or there's some other factor at play that is responsible for my success. And I sometimes wonder if the mantra is responsible for that success. Because I've been chanting this mantra now for 16 years. And like my life seems to be on a generally upward trajectory, so who knows? So Tantra, though, is about sort of directing energy towards a particular outcome. Yeah, so survivorship bias is completely correct, right? So it's very possible. So I'm not saying that, like, I don't think that we have enough evidence that mantras actually work. I don't think so. So Tantra is sort of about accumulation of energy and directing that energy. Yoga is about purification of the self and moving towards enlightenment. And Kundalini Yoga is kind of in the middle. So Kundalini Yoga is about purification of certain chakras. And as you purify those chakras, you gain certain kinds of abilities or intuitions or powers. And what I mean by that is like, so I'll ask people when when I'm teaching them Kundalini Yoga, if I think they're good for Kundalini Yoga, I'll ask them, are you interested in controlling your impulses? Are you interested in metabolizing negativity? Are you interested in gaining compassion? Are you interested in exerting influence? On the outside world? Or are you interested in knowledge? And basically, depending on what they pick out of these, I'll teach them different kinds of practices. So now we got to just talk about neuroscience for a second. So like, there are all these different techniques of meditation. So you can do mantra, you can do Kundalini Yoga, you can do Raja Yoga, right? And even within Raja Yoga, you can do asana, so you can do physical things. You can do breathing techniques. You can do sensory withdrawal techniques. You can do focusing techniques. All of these are forms of meditation. So which one do you pick? And it kind of depends on what you're looking for. So if you want a particular outcome in the material world, I would say that like Tantra is better for you. If you want to grow in a very specific way, a particular part of your capability, then I think Kundalini Yoga is good. And this is where I believe that different meditation techniques map to different parts of the brain in terms of like what they do. And so doing a particular meditation technique, I think, for example, Anahat chakra techniques, which are the heart chakra, which are the compassion techniques. So like metta meditation is a good example of this. I believe that those kinds of techniques actually work on a different part of your brain, like they work on your empathic centers of the brain, more so than like, let's say your knowledge kind of centers. So like your intuition or your brain's ability to calculate is different from your brain's ability to calculate or subconsciously process, because that's where intuition comes from. So your brain's capacity to subconsciously process or calculate is fundamentally different from your brain's capacity to be empathic or compassionate. And so I think that like as you do these different techniques, the best explanation that I can come up with is that it actually maps to different parts of the brain. And there's very preliminary evidence of this. There's actually a study that was done out at UCLA that actually looked at like Untitled Chapter meditation specifically. So compassion-oriented meditations, and whether they're different from a neuroscience perspective than other forms of meditation like traditional mindfulness. And there are studies on things like TM and other forms of meditation, which show that there are actually different EEG patterns depending on what kind of meditation you do. So there's some basic evidence that meditation there is actually evidence. We can conclude that meditation affects the brain in different ways. So different meditation techniques affect the brain in different ways. That is actually a scientific statement of fact. But how each meditation affects the brain and in what ways certain meditation techniques affect the brain, we actually have no idea. We have very little scientific data for that. So I am sort of extrapolating or using reasoning to connect dots that may be scientifically invalid, that each of these meditation techniques works somewhat differently on the brain. Last thing that I'll share with you guys is that impulse control is what I do for addiction. So what I can say scientifically here is that when I teach people these impulse control techniques, their addiction, their ability to control their addiction in their sobriety improves. And furthermore, improves over groups of people who do like plain mindfulness. So does that mean that I'm a better clinician? That could be a confounding variable. I just may be a better teacher. It may not be the kind of technique that I teach. It may be like my personal clinical impact. But I really do believe that these techniques kind of do work. So like impulse control meditation techniques are better at controlling addictions than, let's say, like intuition or knowledge techniques. These are the techniques that I use for trauma. These are the techniques that I use for wealth, for lack of a better term. So when I have a client that comes to me that says that I want to be like more materialistically successful, I teach them these techniques. And then for people who just want to understand like who they are and how they work in the nature of the universe, I teach them these techniques. Like people who just want to know, like some people come to me and they're like, I want to understand how this stuff works. Like all of it. I just want to understand all of it. So this actually is my personal path. So I do these kinds of techniques. And so that's meditation. So let's see if we're going to take a couple of questions. So let's go ahead and start. So I'm going to start with Neer, Kritik, and Kevin, and Kabir Tech Teller. Okay. So let's see if we can get you guys in. Which meditations for gamers? Great question. So I think it depends on where you are, but I think that you should start with actually pranayam or shuddhi techniques. Okay, people are joining. Great.
Hey, Dr. K.
Hey.
Yeah. So, hi. I have a question. Is bees breath, Brahmari pranayam.
Yeah.
Is that a pranayam, a dharana technique, or a pratyahara technique? Because you're buzzing, so it sort of inhibits your, I don't know, sound, I guess. Like you focus on sound, but then the sound dies down. So I was wondering which technique that is.
Yeah, so Brahmari pranayam. So pranayam is the pranayam. So the actual humming is a pranayam, but the Shanmukhi mudra, which is this thing that we do, that's a pratyahara, right? Okay, so it's like so the Shanmukhi mudra is a pratyahara mudra, and you can combine them. So there are some things like, you'll have different teachers will have different kinds of like kriyas. So they'll take like 2 or 3 different meditation techniques and they'll make their own meditation brand TM, and they'll say like, this is mine. And this is my special technique. I think it's better than all the others.
That makes sense. My second question is, what about the potential like psychosis that you talk about that can occur from Kundalini Yoga? And is there a way you can predict the risk of that in a person?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So fantastic question. So one thing that I'll tell you guys is that meditation is not without risks. So there are case reports of meditation-induced psychosis, which is quite rare of a phenomenon. But I think that a lot of the techniques that, so thankfully, most meditation, the world does not really understand more than 2% of meditation techniques. All of the meditation that's being taught by Headspace and mindfulness and things like that, that's primarily because mindfulness is what's spread. Mindfulness is a tiny, tiny part of real meditative tradition. And so generally speaking, mindfulness and the mindfulness-based techniques are very, very safe and have a low likelihood to lead to psychosis. If you go and actually learn Kundalini Yoga and things like that from a real teacher, I'm not talking about going to a yoga studio down the street and them doing asana. That's not real. It's the first step of Kundalini Yoga. It's kind of like Kundalini Yoga is like stretching before a marathon. Like what you learn at the yoga studios is like stretching before a marathon. It's not actually the practice, it's the preparation for true Kundalini Yoga. So the first thing is that psychosis is possible. And so you shouldn't do like hardcore meditation without the guidance of a guru. Okay, so you should have a teacher who really understands this stuff, and then they can teach you. But anything you do at a yoga studio is fine. Anything you do with an app is fine. Anything I teach you is probably fine. I tend to teach more advanced techniques than most people. Like I do teach so this technique, for example, is actually a Kundalini Yoga technique, but it's very mild, basically. And so how can you predict the risk? I'd say it's your overall stability. So remember that yoga is intended to be practiced by people who are purified, right? So these are people who are truthful. They don't lie. They're not necessarily celibate, but they're not lustful. They're most of the time they're vegetarian, right? So you're like a very pure person. So if you're having trouble with addictions or anger or depression or anxiety, you're not really ready for deep yoga practice or meditation techniques. So I'd say that the way that you predict risk is based on the stability of a person. So I had a patient once who was very, very depressed, and they wanted to go on a 10-day silent meditation retreat because they thought that through this intensive meditation, they would get a high dose of meditation and their depression would be cured. There's a chance that that can happen, but there's also that's the recipe for psychosis. Is when you get someone who is ill or unwell or not at peace with themselves, and then you give them a very, very high dose of meditation and they're going to run into problems. It's kind of like taking someone who is untrained in swimming and dumping them in the ocean. They're just not ready for it.
They might learn to swim, but they might drown as well. So
absolutely, right. Okay. So it's absolutely sink or swim. So I'd say start with the small stuff, and then get to the more extreme or esoteric stuff when you're ready and healthy, and then a teacher supposedly will present themselves when you're ready. Okay.
Thank you.
Great question. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, Tyler. Kritik.
Oh, hi. Is it my turn?
Yep.
Okay. This was my first webinar, and really thoroughly enjoyed what you gave. Forgive me for my naive language, but so I invested my focus in the lecture that you just gave now, and my question is sort of branching out of that. So I believe that meditation is something as a state of mind or whatsoever where you can understand and also solve. Right? And to understand is to recognize problems. I saw a question in chat which branched this question out of me, which was okay, do you have a mantra for decision making? So what I'm trying to say is I believe that meditation is the kind of state where you can question your own decision making and question the source of your own insecurities. And how do you derive it down to a mantra or a practice to solve that, what you're recognizing? Is that?
Yeah. So let me ask you something. You said that you believe meditation is what?
So I think meditation, as a box with a question mark on it, is something that allows you to understand and also something that allows you to solve. Now, what you're understanding is probably your own insecurities or something about your impulses for decision making.
So let's start with this, Kritik. Have you been in the box state?
Possibly. It's hard to say.
Okay. So the first thing is that your question comes from a foundation that that box state is a particular thing. So until you know what the box state is, the rest of your questions are logical, kind of like you're building this on a foundation of what you believe a meditative state is.
Right.
Right. So unless that assumption is correct or incorrect, the rest of what you're saying becomes relevant or irrelevant.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think the first step is to get to the box state and figure out whether your fundamental assumption is correct or incorrect.
Like, I agree with how you described the box state as you drew it right now. I could fully correlate and understand how cutting out attention in certain aspects increases it another way, and then you reach this meditative state of mind, which allows you to sit down and focus on one thing. And sort of like, the way I narrow it down to myself is I always think of it as it's like you're running towards a balance of what to internalize and externalize. That's, if I had to say it in one line, that's how I say it to myself.
Okay, so what's your question?
Right. So my thing is, how do you derive what is a suitable mantra or a practice based on what you can figure out is a possible insecurity or whatsoever?
Yeah. So I think that there are a couple of things. So the first thing is that I think something about your conception I kind of disagree with, which is why I'm saying you have to start by actually getting to the state. Mm-hmm. So, and the reason I say that is because actually, like in my experience, you don't need a mantra if you can get to the state. So if you can get to the state, then the insecurity starts to dissolve on its own. Mm-hmm. Or in the state, a mantra will be revealed to you that you can use to kind of consciously dissolve it. The purpose of a mantra is it's because it's given by someone who has been to the state to someone who has not been to the state, and it helps that person because it's kind of like formulaic in a protocol.
It's like a map.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why a mantra is given by like a teacher to a disciple, because the disciple hasn't been to where the teacher has been. Because once you get to where the teacher is, you don't need the mantra anymore.
So it's all about following the discipline to recognize it for yourself, sort of like a pathway.
No, well, it's either or, right? So one thing is if you have a particular insecurity, there are two paths. One is that if you have an insecurity, you do like yoga and meditation, and if you meditate long enough, you're going to get to the state, and the problem is going to be fixed on its own. Just getting to that state will free you from the problem, and that's what we see, right? So I know that sounds absolutely bizarre, but like we have clinical evidence of this. So you take 100 people with anxiety, all of their anxieties are different. You teach them a meditation protocol, and 8 weeks later, their anxiety is clinically significant. There's a statistically significant clinical improvement. So how does that work? It's not a specific mantra for each of their anxieties or insecurities. By getting closer and closer to the box state, it dissolves the root of anxiety. So the particular insecurity actually becomes completely irrelevant. Right? That's my point. And if you go back and you watch the anxiety lecture, you'll see that anxiety has a root. So if you get into the box state, you don't need a mantra because you're dealing with it on its own. The purpose of a mantra is if you're unable to get to a box state, or you want an acceleration towards a particular box state. I know that's a little bit of an oxymoron, but then you're given a mantra by someone who's more spiritually knowledgeable than you, and then it kind of accelerates you in that way. Right. Does that answer your question? So you can go either way. It's just, you can target an insecurity specifically. And if you want to target it specifically, you basically need a teacher who will tell you how to dissolve that, right? So that teacher doesn't have to be a spiritual teacher. That's what psychologists do too.
Is it
So there's a
possible to
knowledge
teach yourself?
Huh?
One way or another?
Absolutely.
Is it possible to? Yeah.
Absolutely. But if you want to teach yourself, then you don't use a mantra, you use the yoga path. And then you'll teach yourself. Okay?
Yes. Thanks very much. Much respect.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to get a couple other, we'll do one more question. So first person, I'm inviting Ryan, Luca, and Tristan, and Lissy. So let's see if we can get someone else. We'll do like one or two more questions, okay? Simon, you with us? Okay, so we're inviting more people. Great, Lissy has joined the room. Fantastic. So it'll probably take him a second to... Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, Lissy, go for it.
Okay, so I've been having a little problems with meditation as a whole.
Okay.
I would say, like, I guess, like, I try to do it, like, in the middle of the day, because I'm not very good in the mornings. My body's very unstable. So I do it around about noonish, maybe 1 o'clock-ish, maybe after lunch. And I normally get, like, 3 minutes into it. And then for some reason my chest, like, feels a lot of stress. And it's my body forcibly tries to pull me out of it.
Sure.
And I'm wondering
like
why that is, and maybe a way to deal with that whole scenario.
Any history of trauma?
The trauma. Did you say history of trauma?
Yeah, just like a yes or no.
Well, I have tons.
Yeah. So that's a very common experience for people who have a history of trauma.
Yeah.
So let me explain to you. So I think, Lissy, your solution is going to be in the kind of meditation technique that you do.
Okay.
So let's understand what happens in the mind with trauma.
Yes.
So when you have a traumatic event, your mind tries to protect you from it.
Yes.
And the way it protects you from it is by putting like pressure plates, or putting a bunch of weight on top of the trauma to push it down.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So when you do meditation,
yep,
as you open your mind and you relax,
yep,
all of that pressure that's keeping your trauma at bay relaxes.
Yes.
And then the trauma starts leaking out.
Yes.
And then, so like, as you do like mindfulness, like what kind of, you do like mindfulness meditation?
I've done mindfulness. I've done third eye. I've done chakrams. I've done sound. I've done ones we use certain I've done body scans. I've done visualizations. I've done like.
Does that happen with all of those, or you have a different experience?
Like 3 meditations, it seems to work the best. One was like the body scan. I got into that like at least 5 minutes, and I didn't get pulled out of it.
Good. So we're going to talk about, there's actually, so this is something where what I'm about to say actually has good scientific evidence to support. Okay. So the first thing to understand is that your mind is trying to keep the trauma at bay. And so if you do something like an open awareness meditation, like mindfulness, where you just let whatever is in your mind like flood out, right? So trauma, people who have trauma, I do not teach them mindfulness because I think mindfulness is a bad thing to teach them.
I tried it once and literally my head was literally just shaking while doing
so
it.
If you look at the meditation techniques, so there's something called dialectical behavioral therapy. Dialectical behavioral therapy is a modification of cognitive behavioral therapy that includes quote unquote mindfulness. So this is the best evidence-based treatment for something called borderline personality disorder. And most people who have borderline personality disorder have trauma early in their life.
Yes, they
do.
So
this is the best scientific treatment for people. So you can sort of do a little bit of a hop, skip, and a jump to say this is the best scientific, this is a scientifically validated meditation regimen for people who have a history of trauma. And if you look at their quote-unquote mindfulness techniques, they're actually not open awareness Zen techniques. they're very sensory grounding techniques. So what they actually do is it's not open awareness where you're watching your mind and you're emptying your mind. Their mind is actually very focused on a particular sensation or bodily experience.
Yeah, I found when I'm focusing on like this, I've been doing sound meditation like 2-3 times this week, and it's been doing a lot better than any other meditation I've done.
Excellent. So what you need to do, Lissy, is not empty your mind.
Not empty
your meditation techniques should not empty your mind at all. They should be dominated by one thing. And as they get dominated by that one thing, because, you know, if you dominate your mind with one thing, the trauma is going to stay at bay.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Whereas if you empty your mind is going to be a vacuum and the trauma is going to come rushing in because of the negative pressure in your mind.
It's just going to fill the void.
Absolutely. So mindful techniques are not good for you. So body scans, so physical techniques are going to be the absolute best. Okay? So like body scanning is good. Yoga is going to be excellent for you. Your meditation.
The yoga's been brilliant.
Absolutely, right? So your meditation should be yoga. So when we do yoga together and I tell you to like focus on the present, like that's where that should be the foundation of your meditation. And then as you get more comfortable with that, then you can start rolling in breath techniques, but also breath techniques that are very rigorous. So your breath technique,
so like the try one where you like
triphasic breathing. Yes. So all of your meditation should demand mental concentration, because if you let your mind relax, trauma is going to come rushing out. Got it?
Yep. Brilliant.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Lissy, does that answer your question?
That's absolutely perfect.
Okay, awesome, man. Good luck.
The whole sensation where I've been pulled out of my meditation like every so often.
You want to keep the trauma at bay, and then over time you learn how to let a little bit of it leak out in doses that you can handle. But your mind will handle that for you.
Okay,
so
cool.
You don't have to worry about it. Okay,
that's perfect. Thank you very much.
Take care, man. Good luck.
Yeah.
Okay, Simon. Last question.
Okay, yeah. So my question is actually also related to trauma. I think the main point of my question is how do I like combine this Eastern stuff that you're teaching us with the traditional Western therapy that takes place, because I also I have like CPTSD, and so basically I'm like still waiting in queue to get into therapy. I don't know, like it will be several months. I'm actually doing a sort of like self-exposure at home. So I'll be like writing about the traumatic event, or I'll be like speaking it out loud in a recorder. So, and I'm like trying to do it in like small doses. So my question is like, how do I combine like this self-exposure stuff that I'm doing with, maybe like some type of meditation or some type of yoga to like just heal the traumas faster or more rapidly or whatever?
Yeah, so I think that question, I'm going to sort of partially answer it. So the short answer is that like, if you want to combine in a clinical way, meditation or yoga practice with Western therapy, which is like literally what I do in my day job, it needs to be with like an actual mental health clinician, right? So like a mental health clinician has to evaluate you and then sort of tell you what they think is going to be good or not good. Chances are that the clinician that you meet is not going to be very knowledgeable about this Eastern stuff, because those people are few and far between.
Yeah.
And so your question about how to combine things. So remember that combining things involves Western stuff with Eastern stuff, and the Western stuff actually has to be performed by a clinician. Do you get that?
Yeah.
So any discussion of combining these two is going to be incomplete until you see a mental health professional.
Okay, so yeah, so you're basically saying that I like there's no combination where they meet in the middle. It's basically like two holes meeting.
Well, no, I'm saying that you can't know where that combination is because you haven't done the Western piece yet.
Okay.
Right, so you're waiting to see the therapist. So how can I tell you how they're going to combine if you don't know what the Western piece looks like?
Okay. Yeah, well, I do know some, like you are correct that it's like better to do it supervised because you don't know what else might happen to you, like breakdowns or whatever, mental breakdowns. but like I've sort of like I just got like a quick review of what we're supposed to do, and it's like basically me speaking aloud about the trauma and then recording myself and then listening to my own recording and like doing that and basically just repeating the story until like I can get to like from 0 to 100. I'm like at a level of like 30 in terms of discomfort, where I'm like comfortable to
Simon,
speak about it.
Okay, so I'm going to answer more of your question, but let's just start by saying, so I understand that you read about what the therapy looks like and you've started the process of doing it on your own. I don't know if that's a good idea or a bad idea, because generally speaking, in my experience, therapists add something to the equation, right? Like, I don't know how else to put that, but like, I mean, people can grow, like, so the majority of people deal with the majority of their problems without a therapist. People deal with anxiety and insecurities and low self-confidence and depression. Like, the average human being deals with all kinds of stuff all the time. Therapists add something to that equation. So I don't know if it is a good idea or a bad idea, or I can't gauge the efficacy of you doing this stuff on your own. Generally speaking, I'm a big fan of you being reflective and trying to grow as a human being. But like, what I'm saying is that you're asking, how do I combine Eastern and Western stuff? And what I'm saying is that you don't really know what the Western piece is yet, right? You can read about it, or you can read about it, but like, reading a book on therapy techniques is very different from actually being a subject in therapy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, there is still a difference. I didn't actually read about it, but the difference you're talking about remains, because I haven't been a patient, but like the knowledge that I'm applying myself at home is actually just a quick review I received from the therapist. Like, I didn't read it online. Like, he just told me, you're gonna wait in a queue, and when you arrive, this is the stuff we're going to be doing.
So I'm not saying that what you're doing is bad. Like, I think you should, you know, let your therapist that you're going to see eventually know that you're doing this. But my point is, your question was, how do I combine Western and Eastern? And my first point that I'm making to you is that you don't actually have the Eastern piece filled in yet.
Okay, so can we just can I make a concrete example? So let's say I'm like
no. So dude, I don't. Sorry for cutting you off, but I just want you to understand that if you want a comprehensive Western Eastern treatment plan for your trauma, I want you to acknowledge, because I don't think we're seeing eye to eye here, that you have not started Western therapy yet.
Okay, so you're basically like, I think, like, if I'm reading your mind correctly, like, you're viewing me a bit reckless. You want me to slow down a bit.
No. I'm not viewing you as reckless. I have a second part to my answer. I'm just trying to get on the same page about where you are. Right.
Okay. So you want me to acknowledge that that what I'm doing is more of an experimentation, and that I should be more patient and receive the whole story from my therapist.
Not that you should do anything. I agree with you that it's experimental.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that when you're asking me, how do I combine Western and Eastern treatment, right? That's your question.
Yeah.
Right. So what I'm saying is that, like, the Western part of your treatment has not really begun, or is not completely begun yet. You see what I'm saying? So in my answer to you, we have to acknowledge that the Western treatment hasn't fully started yet.
Yeah.
Right. So now I'm going to give you the Eastern part. But what I'm saying is that you can't, like, if I, let's say that I say, like, how do I combine like a pizza party with a barbecue? Yeah. And then you can say, like, okay, I have breadsticks from the pizza party, but I don't have the pizza. And we're about to talk to the barbecue, but like, you haven't actually started treatment with a therapist yet. So combining these two is going to evolve once you actually start treatment with a therapist. That's all I'm trying to say.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So I'm not saying you're doing something bad. Like, that's between you and your therapist. Like, if he gave you stuff to review and you're reviewing it and you're finding it helpful, by all means, go for it. It's not my place to say what you should or shouldn't do. It's not my place to comment about whether this is a good idea or a bad idea. You're asking me a question about how to combine Western treatment and Eastern treatment. And I just want you to understand that you can't combine those two until you start Western treatment.
Okay. So, right? Yeah, I understand. But
just logically, you can't combine something that you can't combine until you have two things. And you don't actually have the Western piece yet.
Okay, so let's say it's not okay. So can I like just reformulate my question quickly? So let's just say, because I journal like a lot, like I may write about uncomfortable memories or like, and this is not like part of my therapy necessarily. It's just like a habit I've picked up, which has helped me. So let's say I like journal about a bad memory, like or just journal like about something that makes me uncomfortable in the moment. Like how do I, like, okay, assuming that this is not the whole Western part of it, but just like a small part. So how do I, like, after journaling something, like, should I like do meditation just so I remain with those uncomfortable memories? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. So that was the answer that I've been trying to get to.
Okay.
So my short answer for you, Simon, is that much like the last guy, you should do primarily physical techniques. And I don't know. So when I work with people, like, I actually combine the Western and Eastern. So based on the content of your journal or how often you feel physical sensations or what kind of physical sensations you feel, I will give people specific meditation regimens or yoga regimens. So whether it's a tightness in the throat, heaviness in the chest, or a pit in your stomach, or constriction in your stomach, tension in your shoulders, all of those things, in my experience as a therapist, I will use different techniques for. So the nature of their trauma and what we uncover in therapy leads to a different kind of specificity of meditation technique. And that's why I was trying to emphasize you actually haven't started therapy yet. So that's fine. I'm not saying what you're doing is good or bad. Now, your question is, how do I use Eastern stuff to accelerate the process or supplement my progress and my growth and my healing, which I think is a great question. And the short answer is, since you have a history of trauma, I'd say that you should do things that are heavily or start with things that are physically oriented, just like the last guy. Because we know from studies on PTSD, or not, I mean, so there are also like things like EMDR, for example, which are very intensive dharanas and evidence-based treatments for PTSD. So it's sort of eye movement desensitization, which is it's essentially a dharana. But like, essentially you want to focus on one sense or your body, and you want to use that to fill your mind, because if your mind is completely empty, then the trauma is going to come rushing back. Now, in your case, it sounds like you're doing a lot of reflection on your trauma. So I would say there are other kinds of techniques that may benefit you more, but I still think, I'm not recommending these, but I think like I think if we had 4 hours to work together, I'm pretty sure, or not, I'm not pretty sure. I would imagine, based on what you're telling me right now, that I would probably give you some kind of like intuition or knowledge techniques, because it sounds like you're actually able to sit with your trauma some already, which is different from listening. And if you're able to sit with it, getting some perspective through like more knowledge-oriented techniques, like third eye techniques and charging the laser beam and stuff like that, I think could help you. But I think the safest answer and the most evidence-based answer is to do essentially bodily techniques or techniques that are focused, very grounding on a particular sense or in your body.
Okay, so just to like summarize what you've said, like physical techniques, so I keep the trauma at bay so it doesn't like overwhelm me. But if I'm more comfortable to sit with the trauma, I'll do intuition or knowledge techniques.
Yeah, but
okay,
so that part I definitely do not think you should explore on your own.
Okay,
right? So either you need a competent meditation teacher or a competent therapist, or ideally both.
Okay.
Got it?
Yeah. So then you're not gonna answer. So then you're not gonna answer my next question of where I can find intuition and knowledge techniques.
No, I mean, I'm happy to answer. The short answer is when you're ready for them, someone will present themselves to teach it to you. Right.
Yeah,
so I think the bigger
like
problem here, Simon, is that you're impatient.
Yeah, I think so too.
That's the biggest problem. And so we can talk about, I can answer as many questions as you want to, but you need to learn how to take this slow. That's the most important thing to deal with trauma. You got to take it slow. You can't fix it overnight. So start by doing yoga, and it's very unsatisfying because, I see this a lot where people who have have histories of trauma or bad depression, they want something very intensive because they want to get better way faster, which is completely reasonable because you've been suffering for a long time. Unfortunately, how much you want to get better and how quickly you want to get better doesn't change the healing process. If I break a leg and I want to get back to playing soccer, just because I want to get back to playing soccer super, super bad, what does that mean about my leg healing process?
My body will heal in its own time.
Exactly. And the mind is no different. So just because you want to try, like you can't accelerate the healing process of your leg. You can definitely do some things to support it. You can do some things to accelerate it, but most of it has to happen kind of on its own. And so the biggest thing that you need is patience. Go ahead and start doing yoga. Do yoga every day for half an hour. It's going to be good for you.
Okay.
And then you'll be prepared for therapy. If you start doing yoga today, 3 months from now or 6 months from now, when you see your therapist, your body and your mind will be in a different state, and you'll be able to actually like do therapy in a much more powerful way.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Good luck, man.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, guys. So we're going to wrap up for today. So thank you guys very much for coming. This is day 4, right, of our webinar. We're going to continue tomorrow, and we're going to move back to our other location, which hopefully should have better bandwidth. So tomorrow, I guess we'll do Dharma, and then we'll also stream tomorrow afternoon. So thank you guys very much. So we're accepting donations through Coffee. If this is helpful to you, then please donate. And then, but we're going to try to keep things free and all that good stuff. So thank you guys very much, and good luck. Stay safe, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.